The day I discovered my son had stolen my life's greatest treasure. I was picking tomatoes in a garden that no longer belonged to me. I'm Walter Henderson, 73 years old, and I've learned that betrayal doesn't arrive with thunder and lightning. It comes on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by a nervous real estate attorney with papers that shouldn't exist. My cabin, my sanctuary, my sweat, my soul, sat on 5 acres in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, surrounded by oak trees that had grown alongside my memories. I'd built it with my own hands in 1982, every nail hammered with hope, every board cut with precision. My late wife Margaret and I had painted the shutters forest green because she said it matched the mountain pines. Our son David had taken his first steps on that wraparound porch. Our granddaughter Emma had learned to read beneath the magnolia tree. The property wasn't just wood and land. It was 40 years of life. That Tuesday, I was expecting David for our weekly visit. Instead, I got Brian Caldwell, a weasel-faced attorney who kept adjusting his glasses and avoiding my eyes. "Mr. Henderson," he began, his voice thin as paper, "I'm afraid there's been a situation." Situation? I set down my basket of tomatoes. "Speak clearly, son." He placed a folder on my porch table. "Your son David executed a power of attorney last month. He sold this property to a development company. They're breaking ground in 3 weeks." The world tilted. "That's impossible. This is my cabin. My name is on the deed." "Was on the deed, sir." He opened the folder with trembling fingers. "You signed these papers giving your son full authority over your assets. For your protection, the documents state, due to age-related concerns." I stared at my signature. It looked right, but I'd never seen these papers before. "This is forgery," I whispered. Brian's silence was confirmation enough. He knew, but proving forgery? That required lawyers, time, money I didn't have, and family willing to testify against family. "Where's my son?" I demanded. I don't know, sir. I'm just the messenger. I'm sorry." He left the papers and fled like the coward he was. I sat on my porch for 3 hours, watching shadows lengthen across the land I'd watered with my own sweat. Rage, grief, and disbelief fought for dominance in my chest. But gradually, a different feeling emerged. Cold, calculated clarity. That evening, I called my old friend Frank Cooper, a former sheriff's detective who owed me favors from decades past. Within 2 days, I knew everything. David's wife, Melissa, had been obsessing over a cherry-red Porsche 911 convertible for months. Not just any car, a limited-edition Carrera that cost more than most people's houses. She'd posted about it constantly on social media, tagging luxury dealerships, hinting heavily to my son. David had always been weak where Melissa was concerned. She'd wrapped him around her manicured finger the day they met. My Margaret had seen it, warned me before she died. "Watch that one, Walt. She has empty eyes and an endless appetite." The cabin had sold for $850,000. The car cost $180,000, plus another $50,000 in custom modifications Melissa insisted on. But Frank discovered more. David had been gambling, small amounts at first at the Cherokee Casino, then larger as Melissa's demands grew. He owed money to people whose patience had expiration dates. The cabin wasn't just about a car. It was about survival, paying off debts, and funding a lifestyle they couldn't afford. But he'd stolen my survival to save his own. I didn't call him. I didn't rage or weep. Instead, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. First, to my granddaughter Emma, David's daughter from his first marriage. She was 22, studying law at Duke University, and she despised Melissa. When I told her everything, her voice turned to ice. "Grandpa, I'm coming home. Don't do anything until I get there." Second, to Tom Patterson, the developer who'd bought my land. We'd served in Vietnam together, back when the world was different and brotherhood meant something. "Tommy," I said, "remember Da Nang?" Remember who carried you 3 miles through hostile territory with shrapnel in your shoulder? His voice softened immediately. Walt, what do you need? I need to know if you knew this was stolen from me. Silence stretched. Then, I suspected something. Your son was too eager, too desperate. But the papers were legal, Walt. My hands were tied. Were they? Another pause. What are you proposing? A delay, and your discretion. Give me 2 weeks before you file anything final. 2 weeks. For Da Nang. Third, to Sarah Mitchell, an investigative journalist who'd written exposés on elder financial abuse. She'd interviewed me once for a piece on veterans. She remembered. Walter Henderson, how are you? Being robbed by my own blood, I said. Interested in a story? She arrived the next morning with a camera crew. Emma returned from Duke that afternoon, fire in her eyes. We're going to destroy him legally, Grandpa. I've already consulted my professors. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse. He's facing serious criminal charges. No, I said quietly. She blinked. No? I have a better plan. What happened next wasn't revenge. Revenge is hot and stupid and destructive. What I orchestrated was justice, served cold and precisely calibrated. Sarah's article hit first. Vietnam veterans' mountain cabin stolen by son for wife's dream Porsche. It went viral across North Carolina and beyond. Photos of my cabin, of Margaret and me in happier times, of David and Melissa posing with their new Porsche, carefully obtained from Melissa's own Instagram. The outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Then came the legal pressure. Emma filed complaints with every agency imaginable. Police, district attorney's office, adult protective services, state fraud divisions. But here's where I deviated from simple prosecution. I didn't want David in prison. I wanted him to understand what he'd taken from me. Through Tom, I arranged for the sale to be quietly reversed, citing documentation irregularities. The developer discovered the fraud, insisted on doing the right thing. The money was returned, minus substantial legal fees and penalties that left David with barely half what he'd stolen. Melissa's Porsche was repossessed within a week. Turns out, David had only made the down payment and first month's lease. When the scandal broke and his credit tanked, the dealership canceled the lease and seized the vehicle. I've lived long enough to know the sound of disrespect. It's quieter than anger, sharper than insults, and it cuts deepest when it comes from someone who thinks you're already finished. That sound came from my daughter's husband the moment he laughed at me. I was standing in their living room holding a small cardboard box wrapped in brown paper. My hands shook, not from age, but from nerves. The paper crinkled softly beneath my fingers, loud in a room that suddenly felt too clean, too bright, too cold. I don't visit often. When you grow old, you learn when you're tolerated and when you're wanted. That afternoon, I was tolerated. Is that it? Mark said, smirking as he took the box from my hands. That's the gift? He didn't wait for an answer. He never did. My daughter, Emily, stood behind him near the window. The afternoon sun framed her face, just like it used to when she was a little girl waiting for me to come home from work. She didn't laugh, but she didn't stop him either. That hurt more than his words. I cleared my throat. It's something important. Mark shook the box near his ear like a child testing a toy. Feels cheap, he said loudly, glancing at Emily as if seeking approval. Probably some old man junk. Then he tossed it, casually, carelessly, straight into the trash can by the kitchen. Plastic rattled. Paper shifted. Something inside me went very still. And that's when I realized something. He had no idea who I was. I wasn't always the quiet old man with worn shoes and slow steps. There was a time my hands didn't tremble, a time they were strong enough to lift beams, steady enough to hammer nails straight, patient enough to build something piece by piece and trust it would stand. Once, I was a builder. Not just of houses, but of chances. I came to this country with 2 suitcases and a promise to myself that my children would never feel small. I worked jobs that left my back aching and my hands split open. I learned to pour concrete before sunrise and balance books after midnight. Then Emily's mother died. Cancer doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in like a whisper and leaves devastation behind. I raised Emily alone after that, packed her lunches, learned how to braid hair by trial and error.